Why was she the calmest person in a place where everyone else was about to die? Gunfire cracked so close it felt physical, like fists slamming into the air. Dust rolled through the broken street in choking waves, mixing with smoke and the sharp metallic smell of fear. The wall they were pinned behind had already taken too many rounds. Chips of concrete fell with every impact. Somewhere to the left, a man screamed, short, sharp, then silent. 200 meters. That was all that stood between them and extraction. 200 meters of open ground. No cover, no forgiveness. "We're not making it," someone muttered. "Not loud enough to be brave, not quiet enough to hide the truth." Commander Hayes didn't respond. He didn't need to. His jaw was locked so tight it looked painful. His eyes moved constantly, scanning angles, counting threats, discarding options as fast as they appeared. Air support was too far, reinforcements non-existent, ammunition almost gone. 30 seconds, maybe less, before the enemy closed the circle. Every face around him reflected the same thought. This was it. Every face except one. In the rear of the formation, crouched low, weapon steady, breathing slow and deliberate, Emma Brooks watched the battlefield like it was speaking a language only she could hear. While the others saw chaos, she saw patterns. While they felt time slipping away, she felt it stretch. 9 months ago, no one in this unit would have believed she'd even make it through the gates. 9 months ago, they laughed at her. And the man now commanding this doomed operation had been the loudest voice of all. But Emma wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about angles, wind, movement, and about something she hadn't told them yet. Not because she didn't trust them, because timing mattered. 9 months earlier, she'd stood at the edge of a world that didn't want her. Camp Pendleton loomed like a living thing, fences, concrete, the weight of history pressing down on anyone foolish enough to believe they belonged. Emma stood there with her duffel bag at her feet, papers folded carefully in her hands, heart pounding hard enough to feel in her throat. She poured coffee for these men, watched them stumble in half-awake, boots dirty, eyes distant. She'd memorized their orders without writing them down, learned who wanted silence, who wanted jokes, who tipped well, who never did. To them she was background noise, just a waitress. So when she stepped forward as a candidate for special operations selection, disbelief rippled through the group before anyone even spoke. Whispers came first, then laughter. "That's the diner girl. You've got to be kidding." Commander Hayes didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words cut deeper precisely because he sounded bored. "This isn't a cafe," he said, eyes scanning her like she was a logistical error. "Go home before you embarrass yourself." The room erupted. Emma felt the heat rush to her face. Her hands shook, not from weakness but from the effort it took to stay still, to not run, to not cry, to not scream that they were wrong. She said nothing. Not because she had nothing to say. Because she'd learned long ago that some truth only land after time does its work. She grew up quiet, not fragile, just observant. Her father used to say she listened like the world was always trying to tell her something important. He was a Marine, recon, the kind of man people spoke about in lowered voices. To Emma, he was just Dad. He taught her how to move without wasting energy, how to breathe through fear instead of fighting it, how to wait. When he died, the world didn't stop. Bills still came. School still happened. Life demanded she move forward whether she was ready or not. So she did. She ran before dawn, trained after dark, learned in silence, waited tables by day and carried memory by night. No one saw it, that was the point. Selection was designed to strip people down, to expose ego, to punish weakness. Emma was punished more than most. Heavier packs, less sleep, public criticism, private contempt. She felt invisible and exposed at the same time. There were nights she lay awake staring at the ceiling, shoulders screaming, fingers raw, wondering if proving she belonged was worth the cost, wondering if dignity was something you defended or something you earned. Every time doubt crept in, she remembered her father's voice. A lion doesn't roar before it hunts. So she stayed quiet. And she endured. By the time the numbers thinned, people had stopped laughing. They still didn't trust her, still didn't like her. But they watched. They watched her hit targets without adjusting twice, navigate darkness like it was familiar, move through drills without wasted motion. They watched and they said nothing. Commander Hayes watched too, and said even less. The final exercise broke what arrogance remained. Her team dismissed her, ignored her warnings, triggered alarms in minutes. And then they panicked. Emma didn't. She disappeared. What followed rewrote everything. She moved through the compound the way water finds cracks, quiet, patient, inevitable. When it was over, the silence felt heavier than gunfire. She didn't celebrate, didn't explain. She just stood there, breathing evenly, eyes steady. Hayes replayed the footage until denial gave way to something else. Respect reluctant, uncomfortable, real. The battlefield snapped back into focus. A round struck inches above Emma's head, showering her with debris. She didn't flinch. "Commander," she said calmly into the chaos, "give me 2 minutes." Hayes looked at her, really looked at her. Not the waitress, not the candidate. The operator she had become. "Do it," he said. Emma moved. She didn't sprint, she flowed, using rubble shadow elevation. She felt the wind shift and adjusted without thinking. Each shot was deliberate, each movement final. The enemy never understood what was happening. Panic spread faster than orders. Confusion fractured coordination. Emma created space where none existed. "Move," she said. They did. When the helicopter lifted off, silence filled the cabin. Not relief, something deeper. Recognition. 2 days later, Hayes stood in front of the unit and owned his failure. Emma listened from the back of the room, hands folded, expression neutral. Applause didn't change her. The salute did. Not because it erased the past, but because it acknowledged it. She walked out the same way she always had, quiet, unassuming. Dignity intact. Because sometimes strength doesn't announce itself. It simply waits. And when the moment comes, it acts. Why did the silence feel heavier than the insults ever had? Emma lay on her back in the dark barracks, eyes fixed on the faint crack of light along the ceiling. The building was quiet except for breathing, dozens of men asleep around her, bodies spent, egos bruised, pride stretched thin. Somewhere down the row, someone snored. Another muttered in his sleep. Normal sounds, human sounds. But Emma couldn't sleep. Her shoulders burned. Her feet throbbed. Every muscle ached in that deep, hollow way that no amount of stretching could touch. Selection did that. It hollowed you out first, then waited to see what remained. What surprised her wasn't the pain. It was how alone she felt inside it. Not lonely, alone. There was a difference. Earlier that day, during a forced march that stretched far past what anyone had expected, one of the candidates collapsed face first into the dirt. No theatrics, just a body giving up. Medics rushed in. The march paused for exactly 30 seconds. Then it resumed. Emma had looked down at the man as she passed him. His eyes were open, unfocused, filled with something close to shame. She felt no satisfaction, no vindication. Only a quiet sadness. Because she knew how close everyone was to that edge, including her. And she knew something else too. No one here wanted her to succeed. The insults had grown quieter over the weeks, but they hadn't disappeared. They'd simply changed shape, less mocking, more cold dismissal. During team drills, instructions reached everyone but her. During briefings, eyes slid past her like she was furniture. During meals, conversation died when she sat down. It was a strange thing, to be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. Emma turned her head slightly and stared at her hands. They were blistered, taped, scarred in small ways that hadn't existed months ago. These hands had once carried plates, wiped counters, counted change at the end of long shifts. Now they carried weight, weapons, responsibility. She flexed her fingers slowly, deliberately. Her father used to make her do that after long training days. "Don't rush recovery," he'd say. "Listen to what your body is telling you. Pain is information." Right now, her body was telling her one thing very clearly. She was being tested in ways no one else was. And not all of them were physical. The next morning began before the sun even considered rising. Cold air, damp ground, orders barked without explanation. They stood in formation while instructors moved down the line, inspecting faces, posture, gear. Commander Hayes stopped in front of Emma. His gaze lingered just a second longer than necessary. "You look tired, Brooks," he said flatly. "Yes, sir." "Selection only gets harder." "Yes, sir." A pause. "Hope you didn't think yesterday was the worst of it." Emma met his eyes, calm, neutral. "No, sir." Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. They broke formation. The day unfolded like a slow, deliberate grind. Obstacle courses designed to fail people. Problem-solving drills engineered to fracture teamwork. Navigation exercises that punished hesitation. Emma failed sometimes. Everyone did. But she failed quietly. She didn't curse, didn't slam equipment, didn't look around for validation or blame. She absorbed mistakes and moved on. That unsettled people. During a live-fire exercise, a candidate near her fumbled a reload, panic flashing across his face as seconds stretched. Emma shifted half a step without a word, providing cover, her movement so smooth it barely registered. Later, he avoided her eyes. During navigation, her team veered off course. Emma noticed early, said nothing at first, waiting to see if the leader would correct it. He didn't. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, factual. "We're drifting east. We'll miss the checkpoint." The leader snapped back. "I know what I'm doing." They missed the checkpoint. Penalty time was brutal. No one looked at her afterward. No one apologized. That night, someone muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "She thinks she's smarter than everyone." Emma lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. She wondered when confidence started looking like arrogance to people who didn't want to listen. Week by week, bodies dropped out. Some left angry, some left broken, some left without a word. Emma watched them go with a tightening in her chest she didn't show. Each departure reminded her of something uncomfortable. Survival didn't mean superiority. It meant endurance. It meant being willing to stay when leaving would hurt less. Halfway through selection, the instructors introduced sleep deprivation, not as an event, as a condition. Days blurred, hours lost meaning, commands echoed like they were coming from underwater. That was when doubt crept in hardest. Emma found herself standing in line, weapon slung, eyes open but unfocused, her mind drifting somewhere far from the training ground. Images surfaced uninvited. Her mother at the kitchen table, hands rough from work. Her father's laugh, rare but warm. The diner, the smell of coffee, the comfort of being unnoticed. A dangerous thought followed. It would be easier to go back. The realization startled her more than gunfire ever had. She clenched her jaw, grounding herself in sensation. The weight of the rifle, the grit under her boots, the ache in her spine. Easy had never been the point. That night during a team endurance drill, tempers flared, accusations flew, voices rose. Emma stayed quiet, carrying her share, then more when someone else faltered, not because she wanted to prove anything, because the mission didn't care about feelings. At one point, someone stumbled and nearly fell. Emma reached out instinctively, steadying him. Their eyes met briefly. Confusion, then something else. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of it. The next day, during marksmanship evaluation, the range fell unnaturally quiet. Emma's target spoke for her. Tight groupings, consistent, controlled. An instructor frowned at the results, checked the weapon, then checked again. "Do it one more time," he said. She did. Same result. No one laughed this time. Commander Hayes watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. That afternoon, he reassigned teams. Emma found herself placed in a leadership rotation, temporary, conditional. When the announcement came, a ripple of discomfort moved through the group. One candidate scoffed openly. "Seriously?" Emma said nothing. Leadership didn't mean authority, not yet. It meant responsibility. The exercise was simple on paper. Move a simulated casualty through rough terrain under time pressure, limited communication, high stress. The group argued immediately. Too many voices, too many opinions. Emma listened. Then she spoke once. "We're wasting time." They looked at her, some annoyed, some curious. She laid out a plan, efficient, conservative, built around minimizing mistakes, not showcasing strength. Silence followed. Then, reluctantly, they moved. They finished under time. No celebration, just exhausted breathing and the quiet realization that it had worked. No one thanked her, but no one mocked her either. That night, as Emma cleaned her gear, one of the candidates paused near her bunk. "You trained before this?" he asked, not meeting her eyes. "Yes." "How long?" "All my life." He nodded once and walked away. It wasn't friendship, but it was acknowledgement. Commander Hayes called her in the next morning. No audience, no raised voice. "You're different," he said. "Yes, sir." "You don't react the way others do." "No, sir." He studied her for a long moment. "Why are you here, Brooks?" Emma thought of her father, of silence, of patience. "To serve," she said simply. Hayes exhaled slowly through his nose. "We'll see." As she walked out, Emma felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not confidence. Not pride. Resolve. Because she understood something now that she hadn't before. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that quiet strength could survive in a world that only respected noise. And she wasn't done yet. Not even close. Why did the doubt return just when she thought she'd earned her place? The rain came down in sheets, cold and unrelenting, turning the training grounds into a slick, unforgiving expanse of mud and shadow. Emma stood motionless at the edge of the forest, water dripping from the brim of her cap, soaking into her uniform until it felt like a second skin she couldn't peel off. Night exercises always carried a different weight. Darkness stripped away confidence. It amplified fear. It revealed habits people didn't know they had. This one was meant to break leaders. Emma didn't know that yet. She only knew the silence felt wrong. The team moved forward under minimal light, boots sinking softly into wet earth. Branches clawed at sleeves. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, low, patient, indifferent. They were supposed to infiltrate, observe, withdraw. No engagement, no mistakes. Simple. It never was. Emma had been placed as second in command. Not enough authority to overrule, enough responsibility to share blame. The team leader whispered orders too fast, too eager. He wanted to impress the instructors, wanted to prove something. Emma felt it immediately, that subtle tightening in her chest, the same one she used to feel when a diner shift was about to go bad. Too much noise, Too much rush. Someone about to spill something they couldn't clean up. She leaned in. "We're moving too tight," she murmured, "spacing's off." The leader stiffened. "We're fine." A second later, a boot snapped a branch. The sound cracked through the forest like a gunshot. Lights flared, shouts followed. "Contact!" The exercise erupted into chaos. Simulated fire, orders overlapping. Someone tripped, another froze. Emma reacted without thinking. She pulled the nearest man down behind cover, signaled left, then right, her hands moving faster than words ever could. Her breathing slowed even as adrenaline surged. This wasn't about rank. It was about survival. They regrouped just enough to withdraw, but the damage was done. The exercise ended early. Failure. Back at base, soaked and exhausted, the team stood in silence while an instructor paced slowly in front of them. "Who noticed the spacing issue?" he asked. No one spoke. Emma felt every eye slide toward her without turning. The instructor stopped, looked directly at her. "Brooks." "Yes, sir." "Did you see it?" "Yes, sir." "Did you speak up?" "Yes, sir." The team leader cut in. "She questioned the plan, sir, but—" The instructor raised a hand. "Did you adjust?" The leader swallowed. "No, sir." The silence that followed was heavy. "This wasn't a failure of execution," the instructor said evenly. "It was a failure of listening." He dismissed them without another word. As they walked away, the team leader's jaw was tight. His pride had taken a hit, and Emma knew what came next. It started small. Gear accidentally misplaced, information not passed along, subtle exclusions that couldn't be officially challenged. Nothing overt, nothing punishable. Just pressure. Emma absorbed it the same way she absorbed everything else, quietly. But this time, something gnawed at her. Not anger. Doubt. Had she crossed a line? Was silence sometimes safer than truth? Was being right worth the cost of being isolated even further? That night, she dreamed of her father. They were in the woods behind their old house, leaves crunching underfoot. He knelt beside her, adjusting her stance, hands steady on her shoulders. "You hesitate," he said gently. "I don't want to make it worse," she replied. He smiled sadly. "Truth always makes waves. That doesn't mean it's wrong." She woke before dawn, heart racing, rain still tapping against the barracks roof. The next phase of selection was announced without ceremony. Urban operations. Close quarters, split-second decisions, no room for ego. Emma felt a flicker of something close to hope. Inside buildings, strength mattered less than awareness. Noise mattered less than intent. This was where patience paid dividends. The first run went smoothly, the second didn't. A candidate panicked during a room clear, flagging a teammate with his weapon. The mistake froze him in place. Emma stepped in, redirecting his muzzle, grounding him with a firm voice. "Breathe, I've got you." Afterward, he couldn't meet her eyes. Later that day, Commander Hayes approached her near the range. "You take control easily," he said. "I take responsibility," Emma replied. He studied her. "Those aren't always the same." "No, sir. Leadership gets people hurt if it's not earned." Emma nodded. "Yes, sir." "Do you think you've earned it?" The question caught her off guard. She considered it carefully. "I think I'm still earning it." Hayes said nothing, but he didn't walk away immediately either. As the days passed, something shifted. Not acceptance, not yet. But awareness. People started checking her position before moving, waiting for her signal during drills, not because they were told to, but because it worked. That frightened her more than rejection ever had. Because now, if she failed, others would pay the price. The final test of the phase came without warning. A simulated hostage scenario, high stress, compressed timeline. Emma was designated team lead. No debate, no explanation. The room felt smaller the moment the call came down. She saw it in their faces: hesitation, skepticism, reluctant trust. She inhaled slowly. "Listen," she said, "we do this clean, no rush, no noise unless necessary." They moved. Inside the structure, everything narrowed to angles and breadth. Emma felt time stretch again, like it had on the battlefield months later, though she didn't know that yet. A door creaked, a shadow shifted. She adjusted. A teammate stumbled, she caught him. They extracted the simulated hostage with seconds to spare. When it was over, no one spoke. Then someone exhaled a shaky laugh. That was smooth. Emma didn't smile. After debrief, Commander Hayes stood off to the side as the instructors talked among themselves. When Emma passed him, he stopped her. "You don't lead like most people," he said quietly. "How do most people lead, sir?" "By making sure they're seen." Emma nodded. "I just want the mission seen through." For the first time, Hayes smiled, just barely. That night, alone again in her bunk, Emma felt something settle that hadn't been there before. Not belonging. Responsibility. She understood now that silence wasn't just endurance. It was a choice, one that carried weight. And weight, once lifted, never felt light again. The doubt hadn't disappeared, but it had changed. It wasn't asking if she deserved to be here anymore. It was asking if she was ready for what came next. And deep down, beneath the exhaustion and the fear, Emma knew the answer was approaching fast. Whether she liked it or not. Why did victory feel heavier than failure ever had? The announcement came quietly, almost carelessly, like it wasn't about to change everything. Selection complete. Names will be posted in 10 minutes. No drum roll, no speeches, just a sentence dropped into the air and left to settle. Emma stood with the others, boots planted, arms loose at her sides. Around her, tension leaked out in small, human ways, someone rolling their neck, someone else rubbing their hands together, a few staring straight ahead like movement might jinx the moment. She felt hollow. Not empty, hollow, like something had been carved out and left space behind. When the list went up, she didn't rush forward. She let others surge past her, voices rising, hands clapping shoulders, laughter breaking loose. She waited until the noise softened. Then she looked. Her name was there. Emma Brooks. For a second, it didn't feel real, like seeing your reflection somewhere unexpected and needing a moment to recognize it as your own. She exhaled slowly. Around her, reactions varied: relief, pride, shock. A few quiet nods. One man met her eyes, hesitated, then gave a short, respectful dip of his head. That meant more than applause ever could. Commander Hayes stood off to the side, arms crossed, unreadable. When his gaze met hers, he didn't look away. He didn't smile either. But he nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't praise. It was acknowledgement. And somehow that felt earned. Training didn't get easier after selection. It got narrower, sharper, less forgiving. There were fewer people now, fewer voices, fewer places to hide. Emma learned quickly that being chosen didn't mean being trusted. Not fully. Trust was built differently, slower, with consequences. She was assigned to a unit that had already bled together. History bound them in ways she couldn't replicate overnight. They didn't exclude her openly. They simply didn't include her unless required. Briefings stayed efficient. Conversations stayed professional. Jokes stopped when she entered the room. Emma accepted it. She'd waited longer for less. What surprised her was the pressure. Expectations shifted subtly. Mistakes that were once tolerated now lingered longer. Eyes stayed on her during debriefs. Silence stretched when she spoke, as if everyone was weighing not just her words but her right to say them. She started second-guessing herself. Small things at first, a route choice, a timing call, nothing catastrophic, nothing obvious. But doubt crept in quietly like fog. During one exercise, she hesitated half a second longer than necessary before giving an order. The delay caused nothing more than a raised eyebrow, but she felt it like a bruise. That night alone in the gym long after lights out, Emma pushed herself harder than she needed to. Reps blurred together. Sweat stung her eyes. Her muscles screamed for rest. She didn't stop, because stopping meant thinking. And thinking led back to a question she hated. What if she was only good under pressure, because she'd never allowed herself to feel the weight of belonging? The first real fracture came weeks later. A training mission, simulated but intense, multiple objectives, tight timelines. Emma was assigned Overwatch. From her elevated position, she saw it before anyone else did. A flaw in the plan. A blind corner that would funnel the team into a bad angle. She keyed the mic. "Hold, that route's compromised." A pause. Then the team lead replied, irritation edging his voice. "We're already moving." "Recommend alternate approach," Emma said, calm, clear. Another pause, shorter this time. "Negative." She watched them advance, watched the scenario unfold exactly as she'd feared. The exercise ended in a hard failure. Back at base, frustration crackled through the air. Accusations bounced around until the instructors shut it down. Later, alone near the lockers, the team lead confronted her. "You should have pushed harder," he said. Emma stared at him. "You overruled me. You let it go." The words landed heavier than he intended. That night Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. It felt familiar, too familiar. She replayed the moment over and over, wondered where the line was between respect and responsibility, between silence and negligence. Her father's voice surfaced uninvited. Knowing when to strike. She realized then that waiting wasn't always patience. Sometimes it was fear wearing discipline's face. The next mission came fast. This one wasn't simulated. Foreign terrain, real stakes, lives that wouldn't reset if things went wrong. As the helicopter lifted off, the hum vibrating through her bones, Emma felt something new settle in her chest. Fear. Not of dying. Of failing quietly. She checked her gear with mechanical precision, ran through contingencies in her mind, listened more than she spoke. When boots hit the ground, everything narrowed. They moved through darkness, guided by sparse intel and instinct. Emma's senses sharpened, the world reducing itself to sound, shadow, motion. Halfway through the operation, she saw it again. Another flaw. Worse this time. An exposure point that would leave them vulnerable on exfil. Her heart rate spiked, not with panic but with urgency. She keyed the mic. "Commander, we need to adjust." Hayes's voice came back steady. "Explain." She did quickly, precisely. "A beat." "Make the call," he said. Emma swallowed. "Shift north. Delay exfil by 60 seconds." "Copy." No argument, no hesitation. They moved. Moments later, tracer fire lit the space they would have crossed. No one spoke, but the air changed. Exfil went clean. Back on the bird, no one celebrated. They never did. But one of the men glanced at her, eyes unreadable, then nodded. It wasn't loud. It was enough. Later, during debrief, Hayes addressed the room. "Good call on the adjustment," he said, looking directly at Emma. "That decision prevented casualties." Emma nodded once. Inside, something loosened. Not pride. Relief. Afterward, Hayes caught up to her outside. "You hesitated before," he said. "Yes, sir." "Why?" She considered lying, chose not to. "I didn't want to overstep." He studied her for a long moment. "Overstepping gets people killed," he said, "but so does silence." Emma absorbed that. He continued, quieter now, "You don't need permission to protect your team." That stayed with her. Weeks passed, missions stacked, trust accumulated slowly, unevenly. Emma found her voice, not louder but firmer. She spoke when it mattered, stayed quiet when it didn't. The team adjusted. They still didn't joke with her much, still didn't invite her into everything. But they listened. One night after a long operation, someone slid a canteen toward her without a word. Another time, a spot on a bench was left open beside her. Small things. Human things. Emma realized something then. Belonging wasn't a door that opened all at once. It was a series of moments where people chose not to close it. She thought of the diner, of carrying plates without spilling, of learning to move through crowded spaces without being noticed. All of it had taught her something useful. How to hold steady, how to wait, how to act when the moment demanded it. Victory still felt heavy. But now she understood why. Because it wasn't hers alone. And that weight, that responsibility, meant she was finally where she was supposed to be. Why did the mission feel wrong before the first shot was fired? The briefing ended too cleanly. Emma noticed it immediately. The slides moved fast. The intelligence summary was confident, almost casual. 12 hostiles, light arms, minimal resistance. A snatch and grab wrapped in neat language that made it sound like a problem already solved. She sat near the back, hands folded, eyes steady, listening for what wasn't being said. That instinct, the one that tightened her chest when things felt overly certain, had saved her before. It came from years of watching people smile while lying to themselves, from pouring coffee for men who pretended they were fine before deployments they might not come back from. When something looked easy, it rarely was. As the room emptied, Emma lingered. Commander Hayes noticed. "You have concerns," he said, not asking. "Yes, sir." "Talk." "The source reporting feels thin," she said carefully. "Too consistent, no variance." Hayes nodded slightly. "We flagged that." "And the terrain," Emma continued. "Urban density favors defenders if they know we're coming." "They won't," Hayes said. Then after a pause, "But you're right, stay sharp." It wasn't reassurance, it was permission. On the flight in, the rotors drowned out conversation. Red light washed the cabin in shadows, turning faces into masks. Emma checked her rifle again, fingers moving from habit more than need. Across from her, Diaz caught her eye. "You're quiet," he said. "Normal," she replied. He smirked. "That's what worries me." She didn't smile. When they touched down, the night swallowed them whole. The compound appeared exactly where Intel said it would be. Low walls, minimal lighting, too quiet. They moved in fast, efficient. Entry went smooth, too smooth. Emma cleared her sector, pulse steady, mind racing ahead. She felt it then, a shift, a sound out of place, the faint scrape of movement above where there shouldn't have been anyone. Her hand came up. "Hold," she whispered. A fraction of a second later, the night exploded. Gunfire tore through the silence. Muzzle flashes bloomed from rooftops, alleys, windows that had looked abandoned moments earlier. The world compressed into noise and heat and instinct. Contact multiple. They dragged the diplomat free under fire, bodies moving on training alone. Someone went down hard. Someone screamed. Emma didn't know who. They ran. By the time they reached the ruins, ammo was low and options were gone. Now pinned behind failing cover, the truth settled in. They'd been baited. Emma pressed her back to the wall, breathing slow, mind cutting through panic. She scanned, counted, measured. Hayes met her eyes across the chaos. She didn't shout, didn't dramatize. "Commander," she said into the mic, "2 minutes." He didn't ask how. "Do it." Emma slipped away. The world narrowed as she moved. Every sound sharpened. Every shadow spoke. She felt her father's presence not as memory but as muscle memory, how to place her feet, how to breathe between heartbeats. She reached higher ground unnoticed. From there, the battlefield made sense. She worked methodically, not fast, not reckless, each shot chosen, each relocation deliberate. The enemy reacted too late. When she called move, the team trusted her without question. They ran. She covered. When it was over, the silence inside the helicopter felt unreal, like sound itself was unsure whether it was allowed back in. Emma sat against the bulkhead, head tilted back, eyes closed. Her hands shook now that it was safe. Hayes watched her from across the cabin, not with awe, with understanding. Back at base, exhaustion settled deep, not the kind sleep could fix. During debrief, numbers were spoken, decisions analyzed, mistakes acknowledged. Hayes didn't soften the truth. "Intel failure nearly got us killed," he said. "What saved us was adaptability." His gaze landed on Emma. "And initiative." She felt every eye on her. The weight of it pressed down, not pride, not discomfort. Responsibility. Later, alone on the range, Emma stood staring at a distant target she didn't intend to shoot. She thought about how close it had been, how easily silence could have cost lives, how easily hesitation could have turned fatal. Her hands steadied. For the first time since selection, she allowed herself to feel it. Fear. Not the kind that freezes. The kind that teaches. Hayes approached quietly, standing beside her. "You saw it early," he said. "Yes, sir." "Why didn't you push harder in the briefing?" Emma didn't answer immediately. "Because I was still learning where my voice fit," she said finally. "And now?" She met his eyes. "Now I know silence is a choice, and sometimes it's the wrong one." He nodded. "Good," he said, "because leadership isn't about being right. It's about being responsible when you are." As he walked away, Emma remained there, breathing in the night air, feeling the echo of rotor blades still humming in her bones. She understood something now that training alone couldn't teach. Redemption wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with applause or ceremony. It arrived in moments when fear spoke, and you answered anyway. And she knew with a quiet certainty that the hardest part still lay ahead. Not the missions, but living with the knowledge that people trusted her with their lives. And that trust, once earned, could never be put down. Why did the quiet after survival feel louder than the firefight itself? The base was still when they returned, too still. No cheers, no music, just the low hum of generators and the distant clank of metal settling into place. Emma stepped off the helicopter last, boots touching solid ground like it might disappear if she trusted it too quickly. The night air felt different here, heavier, familiar. She rolled her shoulders once, feeling the stiffness set in. Adrenaline had burned off, leaving exhaustion behind like wreckage after a storm. Around her, the team dispersed in small groups, movements slower now, voices subdued. Survival didn't need words. Emma walked alone toward the locker room, the echo of her steps following her like a second presence. Inside, she sat on the bench and stared at her hands. They were clean now, no blood, no dust, just hands again. That was always the strangest part. Hours ago, those same hands had decided who lived and who didn't, had held a rifle steady while the world collapsed into noise and motion. Now they rested in her lap, ordinary and quiet, as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. Her breathing slowed. For the first time since the ambush, the weight arrived fully. Not fear. Aftermath. She closed her eyes and the images came anyway. Flashes, angles, the exact moment an enemy figure hesitated before falling. The sound of her own voice over the radio, calm, controlled, unreal. She didn't flinch from it. Her father's voice surfaced again, not as instruction this time, but as memory. You live with what you do. Make sure it's something you can carry. Emma opened her eyes. She could carry this, but it would never be light. The debrief was held the next morning. The room was full, every seat taken. No casual chatter, no distractions. This wasn't routine, it was reckoning. Commander Hayes stood at the front, posture rigid, eyes sharp but tired. He waited until the last murmur died. "We were outplayed," he said plainly. "Bad intelligence, bad assumptions, and a situation that should have killed us." No one argued. He let the words sit. What didn't fail, Hayes continued, was discipline under pressure. His gaze moved slowly across the room, then stopped. On Emma. Operator Brooks. She felt the shift immediately, attention narrowing, silence sharpening. 19 months ago, Hayes said, voice steady, I stood in a room and told this woman she didn't belong here. A ripple moved through the unit, not surprise but recognition. I judged her by what I thought I saw. I mistook quiet for weakness, restraint for fear. He paused, jaw tightening. That was my failure. Emma remained still, heart steady, eyes forward. Yesterday, Hayes continued, she saw what the rest of us didn't. She acted when time didn't allow debate. And because of that, every single person in this room walked back onto friendly ground. The silence was absolute. I don't say this lightly, Hayes said. Operator Brooks is the reason this unit is still intact. He stepped away from the podium. Then something no one expected. He turned toward Emma and raised his hand. A formal salute. Sharp, unwavering. The room followed. One by one, boots shifted, spines straightened, hands rose. Not because they were ordered to. Because respect doesn't wait for permission. Emma stood slowly. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor echoed briefly, then faded as she returned the salute. Her expression didn't change. But inside, something long held finally loosened. Not anger. Not pride. Release. Afterward, the room emptied in fragments. Some clapped her on the shoulder, some nodded, some said nothing at all. That was fine. Validation wasn't why she'd stayed. Outside, Hayes approached her again. This time, no rank between them, just two people standing in the quiet aftermath of consequence. I owe you more than an apology, he said. Emma shook her head gently. You don't owe me anything, sir. He studied her. Most people would disagree. Most people don't carry what you carry, she replied, and they didn't see what you saw. A long pause. I was wrong about you, Hayes said finally. Emma met his eyes. You were wrong about what quiet looks like. That earned a small, tired smile. In the days that followed, things changed, but not dramatically. Emma wasn't suddenly loud. She didn't become the center of the room. She didn't seek recognition or leadership for its own sake. But when she spoke, people listened. When she moved, they adjusted. When decisions were made, her presence was accounted for. Not because she demanded it, because she had earned it. One evening, she found herself alone near the edge of the training grounds, watching the sun dip low behind the distant hills. The sky burned with muted color, orange, then purple, then blue. She thought about the diner, about pouring coffee before dawn, about being seen but never known, about learning to carry more than people expected without showing it. All of it had been preparation. Not for violence, for restraint, for knowing when to act and when not to. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the dog tags she still carried, worn smooth with time, familiar against her skin. I did okay, she whispered, not to the sky, but to the memory she carried with her every day. The wind moved gently through the grass. Weeks later, another mission came, and another. Emma moved through them the same way she always had, quietly, deliberately, fully present. She was never the loudest voice in the room. But when things went wrong, and they always did, she was the one people looked to. Because calm had become her signature. Because patience had become her strength. Because dignity didn't require announcement. One night, long after lights out, a younger operator sat beside her in silence for a while before speaking. "How do you stay steady?" he asked. Emma considered the question. "I don't," she said honestly. "I just don't let fear decide for me." He nodded, absorbing that. As he walked away, Emma leaned back and looked up at the stars barely visible through the haze. She understood something now with absolute clarity. Strength wasn't loud. It didn't need permission. It didn't demand to be seen. Sometimes it worked quietly in the background, absorbing pressure, carrying weight, waiting for the exact moment it was needed. And when that moment came, it acted, not for glory, not for approval, but because lives depended on it. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply does what must be done.